18 to 11, stand by, folks. It's that time of the day when, well, it's a normal, different time of the day this week. But anyway, here we go. Here we go.
It's time now for the latest news on what's hot and what's not in the world of technology with Matthew Dickerson on Tech Talk. Here on DCFM 88.9.
Did you bring a note for being late?
I'm sorry, sir. I'll promise not to do it again.
How many times did you say that at school?
Never. I was never late for school, just always in trouble at school.
Yeah. I'm sorry, sir. I'll never do it again. Whack. Yeah. Another story. All right. A couple of interesting ones. Why would you want to set up a mobile phone service on the moon? Hello?
Well, we don't have to travel very far from the studio here and we start to drop out of reception, so you think they'd try and fix it up here on Earth first, wouldn't you? But
that's not our problem. That's the Australian Communications and Media Authority. They've only licenses to go so far.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But the idea here is that by the end of 2022, there'll be a 4G network on the moon. It sounds incredible. It'll be a voice network, a data network. It'll be used for a whole range of things, but this is part of NASA's project to have some sort of base on the moon by 2028. We're not talking about decades down the track. We're talking about this decade. There'll be a base there. And what I find fascinating about this is when they're setting up a base, the first thing, the most important thing, is to have mobile phone reception. Forget about water or plants or some sort of electricity. It's got to have mobile phone reception first of all. So Nokia's got the contract to create a mobile phone network on the moon. Now, one of the things that they'll do with that is not just people when they're on the moon, but they'll be able to control things remotely. One of the issues, of course, is that the moon, give or take a little bit, is about 384,402 kilometres from the Earth on average. So that means any communication that you have, travelling at the speed of light, you're getting to the moon in about 1.27 seconds. So a round-trip communication is about 2.5 seconds. So that can be significant sometimes. In the sort of things they're talking about, communicating with, say, robotics on the moon, that will be okay, that little delay. But if you're trying to have a conversation with someone on the moon, if you think reception's a bit crackly around here sometimes, then just imagine that 2.5 second gap every time you spoke and waiting for something to come back from someone. It makes it a very stilted conversation. But that's what we'll see by the end of 2022, a 4G network on the moon.
Yeah, well, we see a lot of delay on television, a 10-second delay on television. They use a similar system to one we've got here for delay. But of course, the delay on television sees people just standing there saying, waiting, so they can hear what the question is, and then they say yes.
Yeah,
on radio, it's a bit different.
Yeah.
But anyway, a delay of 2.5 seconds, though.
Well, imagine having a conversation with someone on the moon. Hi, Jimmy, how are you going up there on the moon today? And that 2.5 second gap every time. It would make it a fairly frustrating conversation. But I think it'll be used more for data, more so than just voice conversations. And there's not going to be a lot of people up there as well.
No, I was going to say the phone bill won't be all that high.
Well, it might be, roaming.
Oh, I hadn't thought of that. Is your iPhone slowing down?
Well, mine's not, but a lot of people have this conspiracy theory. Every time, and it doesn't matter whether it's Samsung or iPhones, when they launch a new phone, everyone thinks that suddenly their phone is becoming slower. And people think it's a conspiracy. The manufacturer, of course, sends out a message to all the old phones, slow down, so people get annoyed with the old phone, so they want to go and buy one of the new phones.
Yeah.
But there's some reality in it. Some people do think it's slowing down, and it is, not for any conspiracy reasons, though. What you typically find when there's a launch of a new phone, then the manufacturers are typically launching a new operating system at the same time. And that's what's happened here with the case of Apple. They launched iOS 14 only a couple of weeks ago. The new iPhone was announced last week. And of course, some people with an older phone, they've got the new iOS and it's doing a few things. It's re-indexing and basically reorganizing the data on the phone. That actually chews up a little bit of its power, so it does seem to work a bit slower. But it also uses up a bit more of your battery. So you think, oh, I normally get through till midnight before my battery goes flat, and I'm only getting through to 10 o'clock now. It's working harder in the background to use up, or basically working on that, and that uses a bit more battery power. But the other thing is it's front of mind. So psychologists talk about when you see something new and shiny out there, suddenly your old and not so shiny thing becomes a little bit, looks like it's not working as well. So people using their phone think, oh, it's not quite working as well as it did yesterday, again, because they've got that new device in their mind. The other thing is that app manufacturers are putting out new apps to take advantage of the new iOS. So you've got lots of downloads occurring of these app updates. So a whole range of reasons. Yeah, you probably do notice your phone slowing down and your battery life not as good. Some of that will be short term. Some of it will be the envy for the new phone.
Yeah,
But it's
indeed.
not a conspiracy theory. I'm
all
here
right.
to tell you listeners today, it's not,
Not a
Apple working away in the background making your phone slow down.
It is psychologically perceptive, and you're quite right. When you've got something new, the other thing immediately becomes old
Yeah.
in our heads, and we can't get it out of our head. It's quite amazing. If you look at the psychology of that, it's really it's fascinating, actually.
Fantastic for the Samsungs and Apples of the world.
Oh yeah, indeed, and that's why they do it.
Yeah.
In fact, that's why we update cars. That's why we update all these things, because you've got to have the latest and you've got to have the newest.
Yeah.
And you feel bad if you've got something old. Yeah.
Yep, definitely.
And I mean, people apologise for when you get picked up in an old car. Look, sorry about the condition of the car. The first thing they say. Now, where can you get a drink in the desert?
Well, this is quite fascinating. We've got lots of areas around the world that are desert, and it's obviously with things that are changing across the climate across the world, maybe we'll need to inhabit some of those areas. But always the problem is water. You need water. And there's been some ways to harvest, for example, fog in the past, where you can actually take moisture out of the air, but you need the right geographic conditions, the right climatic conditions, and you need about 50% humidity to be able to extract water out of those fog conditions. But some research at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology have actually come up with the idea of extracting water from desert air, from any air at all, as long as you've got only 20% humidity. And most of the time in the desert overnight, you've got that 20% humidity. And they've got to the point now where they've got 1 square metre of solar absorber. So in other words, during the day, it's absorbing power to actually run the unit at night time. For every 1 square metre of solar absorber, they can produce 0.77 litres of water, again with that minimum of 20% humidity overnight. So per day, 1 square metre, you get 0.77 litres of water. Not a lot for a square metre, but you can scale that up.
Obviously, yeah, and you start getting into 0.77 of a litre as a drink.
Yeah, that's right. You can have one drink. That might be enough to get a person through a day, maybe not quite enough for one person for one day, but it's not necessarily saying let's go and inhabit the middle of the Simpson Desert. There are many places around the world where they're living in desert or near desert-like conditions, and water is an ongoing issue. So being able to extract water from the air would be an absolutely incredible bonus for people in those areas. And again, you'd think they'd focus more on third world countries where they don't have clean drinking water. We've got the luxury in Australia of clean drinking water in a lot of places, but being able to extract it rather than desalination plants, or rather than digging wells and trying to pull water up from underground, trying to find a river and transport it there, or pipelines, a whole range of things that people have worked on. It's been an ongoing problem throughout the centuries, but imagine extracting it from the air using the sun as the power source. Quite incredible.
I think it is. It's the most amazing story, Matthew. It really is. And I really hope a lot more research goes into that. I'm thinking of even western towns in New South Wales.
Well, some of those aren't desert-like areas, but they're pretty close to it. You can see the desert from there, I think.
Indeed. And I mean, obviously you can get probably a bit more than 20%, and if you can get that out, fine.
Yeah.
They don't have to pump water, say, from Niggan to Cobar.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
Right.
And I'm wanting to see the large-scale applications of this.
Yep.
Yeah.
Running out of time very quickly, though. The latest major policy change for Facebook is...
Yeah, finally, Facebook is at the point where if someone says the Holocaust didn't happen, or the deaths in the Holocaust were exaggerated, there weren't really that many, it wasn't that bad after all, when those sort of posts are put up on Facebook, they're now going to be replaced with a post that says, here's a pointer to a site that's got some historically accurate information about the Holocaust. And some of these conspiracies have been running around for years, and there's lots of sites that have been out there running rampant with this. And it got to the point where there were some Holocaust survivors. Now, as you can imagine, there's not many Holocaust survivors now, apart from the fact that many people died back in the Second World War during the Holocaust. Obviously, it's a lot of years ago, so there's not many survivors, but they got to the point they were sending Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Facebook, a video per day to basically beg him, plead with him to say, can you please stop this rubbish being spread around on Facebook about the Holocaust not existing, or Holocaust deniers. And so they've finally taken action. And I think it's a great example of some community action. Lots of people kept sending enough information to Zuckerberg that finally he said, you know what, we've got to do something about this.
Well, he should anyway. The name Zuckerberg indicates a similarity of religion.
A Jewish background, that's exactly
Indeed.
right. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. So I'm surprised it has taken so long. Yeah. But yeah, finally now. And I hope this goes to some of the other rubbish. I mean, there's a fine line between freedom of speech and deliberately distributing information that's either hate speech or information that's obviously wrong. Flat earthers is another one that comes to mind. But I hope this is a bit of a lead for a lot of social media applications where they start to look at what's being put out there, and from a social conscience perspective, do we need to change the information that's being put out there?
That's good. Yeah. Mate, we'll see you next week at the normal time.
Excellent.
And I understand that you had people observing you this morning at 9 o'clock, so that's why you couldn't come.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, all good
It's a
fun.
regular process that we have happen every 6 months. So, yeah.
All right.
My apologies to your listeners.
That's all right. Better late than never. Matthew Dickinson, Tech Talk, back next week at the normal time, around about 9:20, DCFM 88.9.